stuff to listen for in the upcoming Fog of War. I'm voicing a character who is the victim of some pretty severe abuse. So is a very traumatized young lady. And I believe she's in her 20s, but she has the impulses of a teenager. And she has three different types of tonal shifts to her voice, let's say. When she's being herself and being slightly defensive, her voice, though higher, gets a little bit huskier, I guess is the best way to do it. So when Cass is talking to her peers and she's feeling a little defensive, her voice is right about here. And she's kind of blunt, but a little bit angry, right? When you first meet her, she has been imprisoned by her sister for a very long time. And her voice, which is one of the ones, if you listened to the Wednesday work in progress from last week, she's a little bit more beaten. So her voice is right here. And she's so happy to have been found, right? And then there's the voice that she only puts on around her savior, Sonia slash Ishtar, where she's very, very vulnerable. And she sounds like this because her voice is very young sounding, because she's just a girl who hasn't been shown any kindness in her life. So those are the three stages that she tends to go through, when she's not activating her power. When she activates her powers, she becomes kind of like a minotaur. That's the best comparison. Or I would say a minazon. Years ago, we created minazons for the books that we were writing, and they are the female versions of the minotaur. And this character does turn into that when she manifests her power. In which case her voice goes here because she doesn't know what she's doing yet, but she's really, really angry. So, that's kind of like just when you're thinking about one character, you have to look at various different situations and whether that character would change their voice, because I know I change my voice. The voice you hear here is me, but still there's a little bit of the acting. I don't want to say acting, the performance voice, so I can enunciate and be understood and all of this. I don't mumble in my regular life, but I'm not quite as, I don't think I'm quite as precise. Dragon might disagree, but I have that voice. I have, the voice when I'm talking to someone on the phone, because I know it's not their fault that this is going wrong, and I know that they're the ones that can help me. I had my phone voice, which Dragon says I pull out when I'm ordering. When I'm ordering food, I don't notice it. But it's when my voice goes about here, and I expect you to listen to me. And if you don't listen, I'm going to be very, very disappointed. So I apparently have a couple of different voices that I use too. But yeah, that's something and that's just me in my everyday, day to day. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't really think about when they're creating a character. And I think maybe it's because I've had to literally age characters throughout an 15-book series, make sure that they go from being about the age of, in one case, 5 to about 10, in another starting at about 8 and getting to about 21. I mean, it was a fun series to do, the Earth Sent series from EM Phoner. In all of those, I had to age character voices because it's not just the kids that are getting older. It's the parents and everything else, right? Same thing just came up in Witch of Shadow Woods, where I had to take a character that was already a little bit, I would say the right around 40. Yeah. Possibly appeared to be 40, right? She's a witch, so she looks a certain way. And I carried that youthfulness into her voice, but she was still creaky. like your grandmother was before you got old enough to really kind of notice your grandmother's voice and the way that it cracks. I think, the best way that I can really describe it. And then I had to age that character. I believe is it over 10 years? Or is it over 15? It's something like that. And she does get a lot older and she does slow down. And I had to change my voice to reflect that with her. And that was, but I think that's a side of narration that a lot of people don't realize what goes into when you're considering character voices. You really, really need to consider if that character ages throughout that book rather dramatically, and if that character ages throughout a series. How much of an age gap are you going to have to consider, because the human voice does go through different changes throughout their life. So, that's a whole nother thing for itself. But yeah, so that character, the one that, circling back, the one I'm doing, Cassiopeia. Yeah, so she's just an example of one of the characters that I have to have various voices for. The main character, I have to have two very distinct voices for, because there's the voice for when she's Sonia, and then there's the voice for when she's Ishtar, and they are very different. Until this book. Exclusive. In the first book, I was told to make the voice of Ishtar sound kind of electronic, right? Which, I can't really do without using like a filter, and we don't want to do that. Or at least the publishers don't want us to do that. So the best thing I was able to do is take Sonia's voice. Sonia sits about here. This is how she talks. This is how she's been her entire life. This is where Sonia sits. Okay? And then I go from that to when she becomes Ishtar, and Ishtar the voice is supposed to be unsettling and robotic and like a staticky hiss and everything. I basically took her voice here and I gave it a little bit less of an emotional quality. And I huskied up the voice a little bit, and I changed my intonation throughout so it doesn't sound like a natural voice, because it's not. It's coming out of a helmet, but it's also coming out of her, because this is another side to her. Let's put it that way. And in book 2, those two have had to become a little bit more similar, like just a little bit in the middle. And that's because of certain things that are going on with these two halves of her psyche. Hmm? So yeah, this book has had so many, a lot of characters that change, but those are the two biggest characters that their voices I have to keep in mind on how to keep them, separate. But that's one of the things I love about this, and a lot of people who go into this don't think about that. You need to consider: is this character going to age? Is this character going to is the vocal pattern going to change? I mean, perfect example, the voice between somebody who is 15 years old and not smoking, and somebody who is that same person, 30 years old, and smokes a pack a day. It's little adjustments like that. So there we go.